All right, Victor, we have Victor, right?
Yes.
Victor Davis Hanson, the great VDH. He's an American military historian, former classics professor. He is a scholar
Okay.
of ancient warfare, and he's a farmer. He actually has a farm in California. He is a fellow at the Stanford University's Hoover Institution and the National Review Institute. Great writer, terrific historian, and has a new book called The Second World Wars, which we will talk about as well. Victor, how you doing?
Pretty good.
All right.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's good to see you.
Yeah.
You know, you are one of the very few intellectuals who has not spent your days picking on Donald Trump. You have actually given him, you basically see him as a phenomenon more than as a problem. And you've actually given him, you're the one voice really at the National Review that has kind of supported him. What do you see that they don't?
Well, I live in the real world. Not that they don't, but for me, it was never Donald Trump in a Manichaean good versus evil, or you have to be perfect to be good. It was Donald Trump versus Hillary Clinton.
Right.
So I tried to be empirical about it. I just went through issue by issue: illegal immigration, regulations, tax reform, identity politics versus unity politics, economic issues on energy development, fracking, deterrent foreign policy versus sort of neo-isolationism. And it was, for me, it was a proverbial no-brainer. And then I asked myself, are there personal flaws in Trump based on the standards we use to adjudicate presidencies that would make him beyond the pale? That is, would the messenger cancel out the message? And although he did a lot of things and does a lot of things I don't approve of, given what I know about the personal life or even the semi-public life of JFK or Bill Clinton or Richard Nixon, or even people, the sanctimoniousness of Jimmy Carter, everybody is a flawed individual. So I didn't think that the messenger canceled out the message, but I was in this, most people did not agree with me, either at National Review or where I work at the Hoover Institution. So I have to confess that that view that I espoused was not persuasive, at least in the groups that I have to work with, or I like to work with, I should say.
Yeah, no, I have the same experience. I mean, I just thought, you know, as I've been saying this morning, you play the cards you're dealt. It is entirely possible that Trump is the best thing we could have gotten and not that great. I mean, that's just the tragic fact of life. When you're looking at Trump right now, you're looking at the DACA thing, which may end up with basically the Dreamers Act being enshrined in law. Mm-hmm. You're looking at the deal he just made with the Democrats. Do you feel a sense of terrifying betrayal, or are you pretty calm about it?
No, I think that if you prune away all the left and right-wing rhetoric, the immigration debate always boiled down to, if you had been here in the United States for a long period of time, 2 to 5 years, if you had never committed a crime, if you were not on public assistance, and you were willing to learn English and play by the rules, and the government would say, we're going to give you an amnesty, not for citizenship, but for a renewable green card. And that would mean, that's up to you. Most people under the 86 amnesties chose to be permanent green card holders. If you wanted to be a citizen, then you would pay a fine, and it would be a little bit more elaborate. But in exchange for that, then the left would say, we're going to have diverse, meritocratic, and legal immigration, probably at a reduced rate. We're going to have strict border enforcement, e-verify, probably a wall, and this would be a one-time phenomenon. And then the Mexican-American and the Mexican national immigrant phenomenon would start to resemble the Italian-American experience of the 1890s to 1930, in which the formidable forces of the melting pot, integration, assimilation, intermarriage, would make it irrelevant, your tribal affinities. So if your name is Giuliani or your name is Cuomo, nobody knows how you're going to vote. But that's not what the left wanted. They wanted to change the American Southwest from red states to blue through demographic realities. And so I don't think that Trump did anything that anybody on the right, if you get Ann Coulter or Sean Hannity, you just say, prune away all the rhetoric. If these people have met all of these conditions, there's going to be a deal. But the problem is always on the left, because I don't think they're willing to make that deal. I don't think they're willing to say, let's have legal, diverse, meritocratic legal immigration. Let's build a wall, enforce the border, follow the law, be constitutional, and give up the idea that we can't change the American Southwest and to resemble California. I don't think they'll do it. And there's another psychological, or maybe I should say a rational fallacy. If the dreamers warrant all of our attention, and they're making the argument that these are an exceptional group, the left is, that deserve to be given an amnesty and a green card, then de facto, by default, they're saying that the other 10 million are not. They don't qualify. They knew what they were doing as adults. They may have engaged in identity theft or fraud every day that they were here, just because to reside here illegally requires you to say things that are not true on paper, or say things, but they don't get that. So if Trump is going to cut a deal on dreamers, then what is left going to come back and do with the other 10 or 12 million?
Yeah, well, if you're expecting intellectual integrity from the left, I think, hold your breath. And
yeah.
You know, one of the things that really does make Trump, even at his worst, tolerable, is the left seems to have genuinely gone insane. And one of the ways they have gone insane is this assault on our history, this thing about the Confederate statues. You wrote a brilliant piece about this for National Review. What do you think they're trying to accomplish with this assault on Confederate statues?
Well, notice that they don't distinguish. They don't say that a good, decent man like General James Longstreet was different than Nathan Bedford Forrest. It's just all bad, and all bad in August, September, 2017, but not all bad in 2016 or 2012. And all bad, even though the majority of Americans are willing to, they can put up with a Confederate statue, as most minorities poll that they can. Even blacks, I think, are 45%. I say even only because they have a vested interest in this, given the pernicious role of slavery. So what is it about? It's about identity politics. It's about showing the majority culture that they can make rapid changes in the social, cultural structure of the United States, and that people will give in to them if they make life difficult, if they boycott corporations, if they get on the news, if they cause violence. And so we have this propensity now that gay marriage can be a reasonable debate with good parties of genuine good interest. And Barack Obama can decide in 2008 that he doesn't believe in it. As he said, he's a Christian, he said, and he didn't think it. But by 2012, that has accelerated. So anybody who doesn't believe as Barack Obama did is a homophobe. Same thing with DACA. Barack Obama said on 10 occasions, as a constitutional lawyer, I'm not a king. I'm quoting directly. I'm not a king. I cannot do something that's unconstitutional. By 2012, when he was up for re-election, anybody who had the position of Barack Obama was a nativist, a xenophobe, and a racist. And so here we are with the Confederates. That issue has gone from, let's discuss it. Let's say that maybe we don't want Roger Taney, who was the author of Dred Scott, or maybe we don't want Nathan Bedford Forrest without some type of plaque that explains the other side to them. But we're not going to go do this with all of our relics. We're not going to go tell Joan Baez, we're going to not allow the night they drove Dixie down that you made millions of dollars on and resurrected your career. We're not going to play that anymore. We're going to ban Gone with the Wind. So, or we're going to say Columbia University has to change its name because of Columbus. So what I'm getting at, long-winded as I am, is that we accelerate these issues by demonizing people, and then we try to make the minority position the majority position by fear and intimidation.
Right.
And what we're looking for is one brave, intellectually honest politician that says, I'm not going to be intimidated. I'm not going to tear down a statue of Robert E. Lee. I'm not going to boycott Gone with the Wind. These are historical artifacts of time and space unique to them. And I expect we're all adults and we can make the necessary contextualization as needed. But we're all supposed to be children, and then Antifa is supposed to teach us how to act.
I have to ask you. There's one question I have to ask you before we talk about your book.
Yeah.
I always joke that because people have heard of the fall of Rome and they've heard of Hitler,
Yes.
they always assume that every historical event is somehow related to the fall of Rome or to Hitler. But
Yeah.
but I have to say that watching our politics right now, I am reminded sometimes of the fall of the Roman Republic,
Yes.
the surging populism versus the paralyzed elite, and just the entire atmosphere of decayed institutions. Does that ever trouble you as a classicist
Yeah.
who knows more about it than me?
Yeah, it does. Not only the armed gangs and street fighting of the late Republic, Milos and Claudius and Cicero and Caesar and Antony, but even into the imperial period during that transitional where Augustus and the first emperors were trying to have a principate. But if you read a novel like Petronius' Satyricon, which is it's a satire of Roman manners. And what are the signs that an ancient Roman satirist looks for in a decline of civilization? One of the things he says is the obsessions with food, exotic food, the obsessions with very expensive purple-dyed clothing among the elite, the obsessions with transgenderism, and the obsessions with bragging on how much clout, property, influence you have. The obsessions with saying that you're no longer an Italian, you're Trimalchio, you're from the Mediterranean, that's the wave of the future. So we have all of these tribal politics, sort of transgendered issues, and it's not me saying it, it's the ancient mind says that this is a long way from the agrarian simplicity of rural Italy.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunately, as they say, when people don't do muscular labor or they're not concretely tied to reality, and they judge their worth by their title or their money or their fashion or their sexual identity or their particular tribe, then you've got a big problem. Diversity in the ancient world is not an advantage. It's never an advantage in any society that I know. It's an obstacle to be overcome. And the Roman imperial state and the United States are about the only two systems in the history of civilization that were able to assimilate people.
Yeah.
The Ottomans wouldn't. Most people can't do it.
Right.
They don't want to try. Japan feels it's got a great model, and it has no desire to be like Germany.
Right. What's the Second World Wars? Why is it called the Second World Wars? Your new book.
Yeah, two reasons. One is that I tried to show that the first year and a half, that is from September 2nd to 1939 to the invasion of Russia in June 22nd, 1941, there were a series of wars. That is the Polish War, the invasion of Norway, the Danish War, the invasion of the Low Countries, the French War, the Blitz, the war against Greece, and the Yugoslavia. Except for the Blitz, Hitler won every one of them. And by June of 1941, he ruled a country, an area the size of the present-day EU, a little larger, and the war was over. Everybody thought it was over. He won. And then he did something that nobody in his right mind ever had even contemplated, that he attacked his most loyal, I should say neutral, but really it was a partner, the Soviet Union, that had supplied him with 20% of his oil, about 50% of his wheat. And at that point, what had been a small series of borders wars, and was not called World War II, it was still it wasn't World War I even, it was the Great War and border wars. And then three events in 1941, the attack on Russia, the Japanese bombing of Pearl Harbor in Singapore, Philippines, and the declaration of war by Japan, Italy, and Germany on the United States, changed it into what was now for the first time, basically almost over 2 years after the fighting. Now it was called the Second World War in England and World War II in the United States, and suddenly World War I became World War I, no longer the Great War.
Right.
That was one reason. The other is that it was so global, and we'd never seen a war, undersea U-boats in the deserts, 28,000 feet above the earth in a B-17, on a battleship, in the resistance in France. There were so many different theaters that were so complex, and nobody who was fighting in Burma thought against the Japanese had any idea what the Bulgarians thought. Or if you were in China and you were fighting the Japanese, you didn't think you were an ally of a Scottish guy and a destroyer trying to hunt a U-boat. It was just, you were, but there were so many different wars, it was hard unify them.
You know, it's an amazing way to look at it. The Second World Wars by military historian Victor Davis Hanson. Victor, thanks so much for coming on. I hope you'll come back, and it's always really a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you for having me, Andrew. I appreciate it.
All right, I'll talk to you again. Bye-bye.
Okay.